Okay, so if we are live, then we can get started. I'll just start with introductions while we wait for the PowerPoint to be pulled up. So welcome everyone to our Community Liaison Committee meeting. So this is the committee that was formed between St. Mary's Cement and the local community, focusing on any topics of discussion and concerns regarding the cement plant operations here in St. Mary's. So the agenda for today, we'll start with some introductions. We will look at our complaints here to date, and then we're going to review our odor and dust complaint process and how that pertains to our facility, as it has been an update since we've reviewed that. We'll talk about our alternative low carbon fuels. We did receive some questions in advance of today's meeting, so we'll go through those. And then finally, roundtable and closing remarks. So for roundtable and introductions on the next slide. So welcome everyone today. Welcome as well to anyone that is joining on YouTube, and welcome to our visitors in the gallery today. Also thank you to the town of St. Mary's for letting us use the Municipal Operations Center here in the live stream as well. And welcome back. So let's go around the table for introductions today. So my name is Kara Pellicero. I'm the environmental manager at St. Mary's Cement. And I've been there for about 8 years.
Royal Plaza, corporate environmental manager for the CNA, in the company for 23 years.
Brett Stan, community member for many years.
Morning, Jim Craigmile, Council of Town of St. Mary's.
Vanessa Barr, HR for the St. Mary's Cement Plant with the company for 12 years. Marty Lindsay, community member.
Chuck Knowles, compliance officer with the Administrative Environment.
Rob Hawley, community member.
Roger Muir, community member.
And Robert D. Councilor St. Mary's.
Did anybody have any questions or concerns about the June 13th meeting or meeting minutes? Okay. So on the next slide, just one more actually. All right, so looking at the community concerns received year to date. So first we'll go through odor, and like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about our odor procedures shortly. So our last meeting was June 13th. In June, we had 0 odor complaints. In July, we had 4, 2 of them mentioned health. In August, we had 1 complaint, which did mention health, and then month to date, September, we did not have any. Dust complaints, which again, I will be talking about in a few slides. In June, we did not have any. In July, we had 3 dust complaint. 1 of them did not originate from our facility. August, we had 1 dust complaint. And then in September, we had 1 that did not originate from our facility. And then on the right there, I've just got the updated graphs from year to year. Next slide. So it was mentioned at the last meeting that it's been a while since we've talked about our complaints procedure. So I thought I would first talk about the odor complaints, what we determined the odor to be on site, and how we address the complaints. So this is going back to 2018. St. Mary's Cement was doing investigations for the source of the odor on site. And we did some in-house lab scale testing for determining the odor contribution of the raw materials. So what we did, we took all of the different raw materials and inserted them into the device on the right. That is a tube oven. And what it allows you to do is heat up the material similar to how it would heat up within the kiln process. So anywhere from 1200 to 1600 degrees Celsius. And then the off gases from the heating up process were captured and analyzed for odor. So the results of that was we did numerous samples, raw materials. We had about 40, limestone, we did a couple dozen, pet coke being the fuel, and then the kiln feed mixtures. And we did find that the samples of limestone consistently tested higher in odor units than other samples. We did dig further into the limestone to see if there was any specific locations in the limestone showing different odor. And if we found it varied. So the graph along the right We've got them ranked by color in terms of the strongest odor. And this would be one borehole. So when we do a blast, we drill down through the quarry face of the quarry. And then as we go down I believe it was 10 feet or 6 feet, we took different samples, heated them up in the oven. And we were wondering if maybe the deeper you got, the more odor would be emitted, or if it was random. And we did find, as you can see from the graph, that the odor concentrations varied. So it wasn't a gradient, it was just mixed throughout the quarry was the different pockets of odor. So limestone currently makes up 75 to 80% of our raw materials. That's why geographically we are in St. Mary's, is because of our limestone quarry, and it cannot be eliminated or substituted. So as a result of that testing, we determined that the odor abatement efforts would be focused on improving the dispersion of the odor. So if you go to the next slide. So we did some computer modeling with our air consultants and determined that a stack extension of 30 meters would improve the odor dispersion of the emissions from the stack and decrease the perceived impact of the odor by residents. So that extension was completed in May 2020. And since then, we've been focused on monitoring. So we've been investigating complaints received to see trends in weather patterns and the complaints received. For that, we've implemented the EnviroSuite software, which uses wind direction and wind speed to examine if odor perceived at a location could have originated from St. Mary's cement. And we do like to note, over the course of this, we have seen community concerns about odor where the results do not indicate the cement plant was the source. But we'll continue to look at those trends. So on the next slide, we do talk again about the EnviroSuite. So what this software allows us to do is input the location of an odor concern. And then the software uses wind direction and speed to look where the odor would have originated from. So where the wind would have picked up the odor and moved it towards the location. So with the software, we've been able to classify 4 different categories, whether the concern likely originated from the facility, possible. So that's when the software shows the exact correlation between the location and the resident. Possibly. So this is where it looks, and you can see it on the second graph shows it well. So you have the direct wind source, but then they add a margin of error because wind doesn't go exact, it kind of varies a little bit as it goes. So they'll put a path on either side, kind of indicating the margin of error. So with the second one there, you can see that if you were plus or minus 50, 100 meters, it likely would have originated. So we classify those as possibly. The third one we have there is probably did not originate from St. Mary's cement. So as you can see with the purple on either side of the trajectory, it's nowhere near the source of the odor being the main stack. So that type of concern probably did not originate from St. Mary's cement. And then the last one we have is a very evident odor concern that did not originate from our facility. There's a fifth one that I don't have on here. That's when our residents do not provide a location, so we cannot use the software. So if you go to the next slide, specifically looking at the odor concerns that we've received this summer. So like I mentioned, we had 3 in June, which likely originated from our facility. In July, we had 3 that likely and 1 that possibly, and then in August, it likely originated from our facility. So looking at last year, we only had 4 concerns, which all likely originated. And then this year, we are still seeing similar trends with likely originated. And again, there's a couple that did not provide locations. So that's what I put together for odor complaints. Is there any questions or comments on this? Yeah, right.
So you've been collecting the data from EnviroSuite for what, 3 years, 2 years?
Yeah.
What are you gonna put together some kind of a summary of, you know, typically we see the odor, I mean, it's very random. As I'm one of the guys that phones you and says there's odor. So, and I'm finding it fairly random. It's kind of surprising some days when you do get odor. And it's very windy and you wonder why it's still there kind of thing. So I'm just curious, you know, what you're going to do with the data, when are you going to put together something that has some meaning that says, okay, these, in the 4 seasons, we see this, this, and this, and you know, just some kind of a base in high humidity, we get it's worse, or, you know, like, it's great that you do this, but what are we doing with the data? Where are we gonna go with it? I know you can't do anything specifically. And I can't do anything specifically except go walk outside and go, man, it stinks today. You know, really, that seems to be part of life, which I'm still not happy with. And I know you can't take the stack up anymore. I guess you could, but cost is probably extreme. And I am high. I'm almost at the same level.
Just some weather conditions that also matter, they had to do.
Yeah. So I'm just looking to see, you know, where do we go from here, even if it's nowhere, but at least, we have some data that says something. I'd really look forward to seeing some information on that.
So I can pull that together for the next presentation. You talked about, you know, humidity. I can talk about, barometric is a big one that we'll see.
Yeah.
If the barometric pressure is dropping, then it tends to
Yeah.
change the dispersion.
Down.
So I can pull that together for sure for the next meeting. And then just to comment on your random comment, so wind directions obviously changed a lot.
Yes.
And then the limestone, I talked about it on the previous slide. It's
Yeah.
not a consistent location in the quarry, so that's probably. part
And
of
I,
it.
and I think, I haven't double checked, but I'm pretty sure every single one of my complaints is 100% that it's coming from the plant.
There was one or two last year that were.
Really? Well, then somebody else needs investigating.
The year before, 2023.
Yeah.
We are in an agricultural area, so.
Oh, I understand that. I know the difference between, what they're spreading on the fields and what I consider,
Organic and really organic.
anyways, that's my take on it.
Anyone else?
So, one, what he was saying. The temperature, we have an extended period of high temperatures. Does that affect the odor complaints? Does that affect the dispersant?
I don't think so. The only thing I could think is people will be outside more during the nicer, warmer weather.
Or inside when it was?
Yeah, we're inside more. I mean, we're also typically in a shutdown more during the cold months, so that might factor a little bit, but overall, I don't think it does. Okay.
Kara, I think a bigger factor is human perception. Cause we could all be in the room, we could all be at the same location, standing in somebody's front yard. Two people might smell and say it's obnoxious, and seven of us might say we don't detect anything. I mean, that's always going to be an issue with odors, and typically when they determine odor threshold values in a laboratory, they will evaluate each individual. And so if you're on the spectrum, top 80% you're smelling everything, you're not going to be on the panel, and if you're at the bottom 20% where you're not smelling anything, you're not going to be on. The odor thresholds are determined between that, you know, that mid-range people. So I've noticed since the actual stack was extended that I don't detect the odor personally in the neighborhood, but I do now detect it further away where it matches the dispersion modeling, maybe at the golf course.
Yeah.
You know, 2 or 3 times. So.
Yeah. Where are we at with the, I'll call it the smellometer that the guy showed up with that day, and we wandered around trying to determine if he could detect. Remember we did that?
Yeah, that was a one-time thing.
Yeah, have you still got that guy and that stuff? You don't have that in?
We do still work with the consultant on other projects.
Because I really think, like you're saying, it would be really great if somebody could show up. Because the smell is not 5 minutes, it's hours typically. And it would be really nice if somebody could show up and go, because I know I'm on the sensitive side, I absolutely know that. But it would be nice to help the data, maybe to say, you know, it's light, but I think it's bad, like, whereas everybody else might go. And I've been pounding on this for 5 years, so my nose isn't gonna go away until I drop dead, but in the meantime, and it is very surprising. Some days it's hot, humid, perfect, you know. But then if I smell it, it's usually the wind is blowing my way. It could be cold outside, could be hot, it could be whatever, and I try to send some information. I use my smellometer of 0 to 10, and I'll say, hey, it's a 7 as far as I'm concerned today, or a 3, or You know, and I try to gauge it, so you've got some information for me on that.
Well, anecdotally speaking, my shop is just up the hill there. And I can see Surveying, Tubing Company, and I can see the stack.
Yeah.
And there are, for the most part, I can tell that all three of them are producing some.
Yeah.
Some kind of output. And for me, the worst offender there is Surveying. You keep thinking, oh, it's Kellogg's,
Yeah,
but it's not, so.
yeah, it's a completely different smell from my perspective, anyways.
But it does create this melange, this
Yeah,
mixture of.
Well, I'm sure that some of the tracking would show that comes from there, but my question for the ministry might be, what do you do with that? Like, do you share that with the ministry, and do they proactively gather some information? Because I don't call the ministry ever. I send an email to Carol and say, hey,
All the concerns that we report to the ministry do include the odor suite software if the location was
for you,
prohibited.
yeah.
And then in terms of where that goes from there,
Do you send anything else out to say, here was an odor complaint that wasn't from us? Does that information go anywhere?
It comes to me, yes.
Okay.
And then we,
What are you doing with it?
look at it and chart trend and things like that.
Maybe you could provide us with some summaries.
If you have other, possible locations that you should look into, I'm very happy.
Well, Surveying's definitely Finney way over there is, you can smell it when you're driving past there. Sugarcane, you can smell it when you're driving past there.
Sorry, what is?
What's called, it's rendering. It's a rendering plate, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't drift, I don't know where it drifts, the smell, I've never smelled it where I live, which is, right over there. I don't think the Purina, I don't think I smell that.
I do.
Not to say
I'm up
you
by
do.
you as well, yeah.
yeah.
So this is the old, whose smell is
I can
picking
smell
up what?
McDonald's, I know some days, but I can smell the oil and I bring, the fries because it smells so.
But I mean, you've got, Purina's been, they're in the wind stream, definitely they're in the wind stream, because they're on that side of the road. Would be nice to know if 10% is theirs, just so we know. Can they do something about it? Should they do something about it? Maybe. You won't know unless you have the information, and if you can do that on our behalf, that would be handy.
And that is something, if, Amanda, if you don't mind going back a couple slides, just one actually. So that is an interesting one too. If you look at the second one there, so
Yeah.
that's when it possibly originated from St. Mary's Cement. So there are, as we all know, about a dozen different industries up and down James Street.
Yeah.
And chances are it's going to pass through those.
Sure.
So we would say, yes, it could have been us. That doesn't necessarily mean it couldn't have been
Yeah,
another industry,
absolutely.
so.
Yeah. No, and I think it's interesting. I mean, you've spent the time and the effort, and the data's there.
Yeah, I can do some of that. And
Pull it out. The town should be interested to know that if there's other culprits out there that we need to, ask them if they can do something with what they're doing with the environment. I mean, perception, like you say, some people don't want them to live in St. Mary's because it smells bad.
The bottom line is that the regulation will state, you may do a survey on what the odor threshold value is. And the odor threshold value is 50%, the average of 50%. Well, can we go through panel? You might be 4 times that all the time. So it's well within compliance, but it's not compliance for you.
Well,
And then, you're a nuisance, but they're
Yeah,
right within the regulation.
You don't want to beat a dead horse, but I mean, the regulations are there, the companies are meeting them or are supposed to meet them. Regulations, in my opinion, need to evolve, and they don't. That's a whole nother,
That's a different
nightmare to go through. So, I think it's a matter of take the data we have, where is it, what does it say? Where is it pointing? Should it be a project or not? If it's once every 9 months, okay, well, that's no big deal, but if it's monthly and it's irritating people.
If it's once a month, 1 day a month or something like that, you know, it's probably not gonna stir any sort of difference.
No, exactly,
You know,
and, you know, and if they all meet the regulations.
I guess I'm at James Street in Meadow Ridge. And the odors that I would detect would say that I have no concerns that there's any non-compliances locally. You know, from my perspective,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't hear that from many of the neighbors or whatever. And especially since the stack has been extended and, you know, but I don't know what happens on a certain day, on a certain wind condition with 3 or 4 different plants and 3 or odors from each one and what the synergy effect, I have no, you know, that's always been an issue and it's gonna continue to be an issue.
So I've only lived here 5 years, so I showed up exactly when the stack was finished. And I think within a week, I phoned you and said, you came to my front yard,
Maybe a month, but it's
Yeah.
close.
pretty close. I said, stinks out here, what's going on? You know, I mean, to be blunt, you know, it was bad. And I don't know if it's better or it's just random. And I know I'm getting tolerant. I know I don't send an email every single time that it smells, because you'd probably get way more than you've got. But you can't be bothered, or I'm thinking, oh, it's a 3, but you know, it's there. It's there. And I unfortunately, I spent a lot of years in British Columbia where you walk outside and you smell pine trees. Yeah, they're on fire, a lot of, but you smell pine trees. So it was a big change for my environment. So that's why I noticed it so much, unfortunately, for the whole situation. But anyways, move on. See what you can do.
I will just make one more comment. When we get concerns, it's important for people to describe the odor, right? Because that would help with a lot of information for other industries as well. If somebody describes it as, you know, an industrial odor, well, they're all industrial odors versus it smells like exhaust, it smells like combustion, something like that. There's specific terms that would be helpful. And I don't often get good descriptors from people. I don't ask for much, but I would like a little bit. All right, so if that's all for odor, we can move on to dust concerns. So we have developed a procedure, or facility for working with residents to address community dust complaints. So how we do that is when we receive a call about dust from a resident, or if somebody's emailed the ministry, then they contact us and we send a representative from the company as soon as we can to the residents. So typically our response time, I would say, is about an hour, if not less. If there are, you know, on the weekend or anything like that, we do try our best to get there first thing Monday morning. But we do try to get to any concerns that we receive as soon as possible. And the reason we need to get there as soon as possible is we want to make sure that there's no other material, I'll call it contamination, affecting the material that we're going to be finding. So when we get there, we use deionized water and ashless filter paper to remove the sample from the vehicle. So typically, we would take it off of the windshield. I like to do, you know, when your wipers go and there's the corner in the top, that's typically where I would do my sample. So the deionized water, you're not adding any minerals. That's what deionized is. It's got all of the impurities taken out of it. So you're not adding any minerals to the sample that you're taking. When you get the vehicle or the equipment or the material wet, it becomes sticky. So mud is going to stick better to my piece of paper compared to a dry material. We're also going to see when we're adding the water if the material starts to react. So if it would be limestone, it's going to turn into mud. If it's, you know, agricultural, it's going to be mud. If it is cement, it's going to start reacting and get sticky, and I can see that as I take my sample. And then that filter paper is ashless, because when we take it to the lab, we actually put it in a vial and light it on fire, and the material, the paper will disappear and only leave the residue because it's ashless, so there's no residual left there. Like I said, the windshield or the sunroof, we don't want to scratch the surface of the paint, so we try to avoid any paint surfaces. The rear windows tend to get a lot of kickback on them from driving down the roads, so we try to avoid that because that would be contamination pre-existing. Windshields tend to be clean, people keep them clean so they can see. And then typically the side vehicles, they will work, but we prefer more of a horizontal surface because that's how the material is going to land. So then we take the sample to the lab to determine if it matches any of our raw materials. So there are about 40 raw materials that we check. Or products, we've got about 8 different cement types, and then we also look at intermediate products in the process. So the test methods we use, these are common in the cement industry. They're certified to ASTM, which is the technical standards methods for testing materials, things like that. It's the same methods that we use. And then we use the results to compare to our on-site products and materials. Next slide. So while in the lab, we're also going to look at some root causes. So first we'll look at the location relative to the cement plant operations, you know, if they're closer to the property line versus further. So the distance, and then the location to other sources of dust. So if there's construction or farming, roadways going under construction, etc., or seasonal sources. We also look at weather conditions. So I didn't mention it on the last slide, but we need to know, you know, when the material arrived. So if they said it happened overnight, we would look at the wind direction overnight and the wind speed to see if it's going to line up with the location. I'm also going to look for any moisture or dew that would have landed at the time as well. And then plant conditions. So once we have looked at that, we're going to look on site. So our employees are constantly observing for dust on site. We do take immediate action to eliminate dust sources as required, and then we do record those actions as well. So once the analysis is back from the lab, we compare the data from the root cause to the analysis to determine if the material could have originated from our facility. I will add here, we do know that there's other limestone in the area, right? So we have limestone in our quarry, but gravel roads are limestone. We also know if there's construction going on, maybe they were using cement or concrete at their location. So we do try to keep an eye for stuff like that, but we do try to give the benefit towards the resident in those instances. So on the next slide. So these are the 4 that we've received this summer. The first one did not indicate cementitious material. 2 in July, we actually did have an on-site malfunction that we reported as a spill. And that was causing 2 dust concerns that day. In August, we did have a material transfer point with moisture management issues that we addressed. And then on September 2nd, we did have one that was not cement material. So I don't have any statistics on year to year here, but if you want, I can include that in the next meeting as well. Are there any comments or questions about dust?
When you analyze the sample, is it really obvious whether it was from the, you know, road dust versus your plant?
Yes, so typically if it's road dust, you'll see salt in it. I'm sure the lab can speak to this better, but salt is the biggest one for road dust. And then the other thing is it's dirty. So you'll see other things like from vehicles, you'll see different contaminants and such in there as well.
I was gonna ask something similar because the word sticky always comes up. So I'm glad you used the word sticky because that just brought it home for me. And the one and only time I know that I had an incident with my car, it was sticky and took quite a bit to get it off, so yeah.
So moving into our next topic, which is alternative low carbon fuels. So I guess just a quick reminder, refresher, our facility has been using alternative low carbon fuels since May of last year. So this is used as a substitution for pet coke in the kiln. And it is 1, reducing our CO2 impact, and 2, decreasing the impact of these non-recyclable materials from going to landfill. So on the next slide, I'd like to give an update on how much we've used and try to give a picture as to how that pertains to us. So as of, I should say, August 31st, we have consumed 1,727 tons of wood, and more impressively, 18,095 tons of plastic as alternative low carbon fuels. So again, a reminder, the process is so hot and the material is in there for so long that the fuels are incinerated to the elements, which are then captured in the product and do not go out in the air emissions. So industry-wide, it is a common practice for using alternative fuels, as it is a good alternative to conventional fuels like pet coke. So on the next slide, I always try to put this into terms that we can kind of grasp a little better. So since May of 2024, we have used over 1,000 trucks of plastic and 86 trucks of wood. These are actual numbers of trucks counted as coming to the site. And on the next slide, the average Canadian, according to Statistics Canada, the average Canadian throws out 105 kilograms of plastic per year. So as of August 31st, the quantity of St. Mary's cement has used as alternative low carbon fuels is 172,323 Canadians worth of discarded materials that has not gone into landfill. Questions on that?
You don't go for recycling yet, or we could be RA?
So we have not. We did talk to BRA and there's some concerns about the quality of their material. I know it's a funny way of looking at it, that the quality of the waste is not sufficient for us, but we do need consistent, the way that we process it on site. If it will get tangled up in our equipment and cause operational, that's something that we want to avoid as well. So we have looked at local, they're aware of what the concerns are. And at this point, we haven't heard as to any changes to rectify those, but it's definitely a conversation if they do get that direction. I will say, I do know one of our materials comes from Stratford CRP. We get some stuff from them. I think we'll probably get a truck every 3 months. So there are smaller local sources being used.
So what you're doing is reduce your reliance on one other fuel product, and by how much?
Petroleum coke, and I don't have the number in front of me for tons per hour, but our thermal substitution rate, which if you look, the heat that comes off of burning pet coke versus wood versus
Right.
plastic, they're a little different. But our thermal substitution is at on average about 20%. Okay. So at this point, we will go through, I did receive an email from a resident, and actually we have our resident with us today. Hope that was okay that I pointed her out. So these are some questions that were brought forward in advance. I did go through each question on the next slides, so I'll go through them one at a time that way, if that's okay, but I just will read the introduction. So I'm a longtime resident of St. Mary's and have some concerns related to St. Mary's cement stack emissions. I would like to ask the committee members a few questions related to air emissions generated by St. Mary's cement. So as you can see, there's 4 questions. We'll go through those on the next slide. So I did prepare some answers that we'll go through with the committee now, as that is the format of our meetings. And then if there are any further discussion questions that we want to talk about after the meeting is over, then we can open the floor then. So the first one was, please provide an average location POI, point of impingement, the point at which a contaminant contacts the ground or a building. How was the decision made as to what would be an acceptable exposure at the average POI? So for our point of impingement calculations, we work with Ramble Engineering on both air dispersion modeling and the reporting requirements with that. So these point of impingement limits are determined by the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Health. The regulations for point of impingement are calculated on a maximum case scenario. So not an average, they actually look at the worst possible emission points. That is what we would compare to the point of impingement limits. So for our maximum emissions scenario, we did model that for all the contaminants as per the ministry approved AirMont system is the software that does that, and site specific meteorological data provided by the ministry. And then the results of those are actually displayed. Displaying the maximum POI are updated annually, and these results are actually directly on the website. So there is an annual compliance report on there, and the 2024 results showed the maximum case scenario emissions for all of the components were below the limits. So therefore the facility can continue to operate. So that answered the question. Instead of looking at average, we just look at maximum. Okay, next slide. When stack emissions are tested and reported, is the sample taken at 100% burn capacity? So I did note, we actually have a continuous emissions monitoring system. So the emissions are not tested only one specific time. We do have continuous monitoring on our main stack. So this system takes updated readings every 10 seconds for the large components being nitrogen oxides, SO2, carbon dioxide, and opacity, which is the dust. The monitoring system must comply with the requirements of EC 32102. And Jim's thinking that replaced PG7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a document which outlines the requirements for the performance, calibration, certification, reporting, and compliance requirements of our analyzer. So in terms of 100% burn, I mean, regardless if we're for 100% or 75, whatever we are, we're continuously monitoring. And then we do have additional requirements within the air permit that require full plant production capacity. So we ensure that we're doing all of that testing as required by our air permit. Questions on that? Okay. Next slide. Have there been any investigation or studies related to long-term exposure to emissions generated by the production of cement products? So this is a broad question. There's about 2,200 cement plants worldwide. And ultimately it's important to just look at here, because this is where we're looking at the limits. So we did work with the health unit in 2018, and they published a report about the health hazards here in St. Mary Cement. The report is available on the town website and on the St. Mary Cement website. And the limits within there are developed by the Ministry of Health and are determined based off long-term exposure. So the report is there. In summary, they looked at things like asthma, cardiopulmonary disease, and found there was no trends of increased rates of these in St. Mary's. So I did also reach out to the health unit to see if there's any more information we can provide if they're interested in updating that report, and I have not yet heard back. But if they are, then St. Mary Cement is definitely willing to work with them on updating information there. And then the last one. With ongoing global warming, heat events, and air quality alerts due to forest fires, is there any decision-making guidelines for this company to not burn during those events, thereby not adding to the burden of pollutants? So studies have actually found that the emissions from wildfires in Canada contribute more CO2 emissions than all other industries combined. That report actually was from NASA, which I thought was an interesting source. So in 2018, we also had, the ministry had installed a monitoring station in town for PM, which is the biggest concern from forest fires. And actually noted that there was more PM from non-industrial sources, so not St. Mary Cement. And St. Mary Cement is a 24/7 operation. So in terms of properly shutting the process down, the primary equipment takes about 48 hours. So in terms of looking at, events like the fires up north, it's not something that we can easily accommodate into our operations. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So that brings us to our round table. So at this point, I will hand it off to Ruben.
No, congratulations.
Like I said, I'm surprised at the number of odor complaints. It didn't actually smell too much, other than sugarcane this last few months. Oh, that one. I'll try harder.
No, I think everything is fine. I mean, as far as the odor goes, I mean, I don't detect it all that often. When I do, it's not obnoxious to me. So, I just, that's a cement plant, I think it was, you can go back and look, so Friday, so I think it was Thursday morning, and I was the very due north of you out on Emily Street, but it's pretty obvious to me when it's the cement plant, I can detect a little bit of the sulfur. But and then I don't think it lasted all that long, an hour.
How long have you lived here?
Long time. I was born here. But I was away for 50, I was away for 40 years. I was in GTA, which was first.
When you talk to people, well, they're bogging now. I worked downtown Toronto for a long time.
Yeah.
But when you talk to people that lived here their whole lives. It's like, well, so it's new people that come in probably are bigger pains in the butt because they're like, whoa, this is something I've never smelled before. I mean, and I lived in Burlington, you could see the brown haze moving across Lake Ontario, so I've lived in a lot of different environments. So I understand. I would just like to see some kind of data and know where all this data collection is. Where's it going? What's good? What are we gonna do with it? How's it gonna be useful? Is it just information that goes into the round file and nothing happens? Like, for me, if you're not gonna do anything with it, why collect it?
Well, it's important to remember, for example, what is the frequency, because we're going to have increase of stack is not going to eliminate all the other complaints, so we're going to have some of them in the year because of weather condition.
Yeah.
I think it's important to monitor to see this, it's increasing, it's having a change or not. If it's something few every year, then we will have those, but it's something that, no, we know that it's going to happen.
I was thinking if you took a whole year's worth of those charts, would show where the, and say, okay, here's 12 months worth. What do we have? How many of those are mine? So that I learn,
Yeah.
because I don't wanna, you know, if honestly, if I'm phoning or sending an email saying it smells and it's Purina, then I'm gonna change where I email, you know, and not bother you. So I think it's important for everybody to be educated as to what in this area are the companies that are putting out emissions that may be totally legal, but are offensive.
I just think because we're sitting here part of the St. Mary's Cement Plant Community Liaison Committee, if I detect odors 5 times annually, maybe 2 are from the cement plant and the other 3 were somewhere else, but
Yeah.
I don't have the data personally. And I'm not about to point the finger at something randomly, you know, so right now, we're only talking about the cement plant. I mean, I lived in Oakville for a number of years. Unfortunately, there's a cement plant there that's right on the turn.
Yep.
You see that tall stack, they took all the heat for everything that was in Mississauga, because that's what you see. You see that large stack and you see the flame.
Never smelled it once.
It was a dust issue. It was what you could see. You could see this.
I lived in Bronson.
Yeah.
Too far away from it.
It was a, you know, once you separated the emissions from one, and got rid of the ammonia, then you didn't have that opaque plume, you know, it was, it wasn't that it looked dusty, but it wasn't, it was just 2 different compounds joined together, and as they cooled off, they just gave you a nice white opaque plume with no dust in it. Yeah, but it didn't look good.
Nothing for me, thank you. We'll activate that.
Play that.
Yes, I'm just listening and with all the information you have. And the resident here has pointed out or asked questions that we've kind of already known. Would there be a basis for putting a monthly report in the paper or biannually, or just to educate people that there is other sources of smells and dust and everything that you know and the average general public doesn't think about? Whether it would be a public relations thing or not, I'm not sure. Just contemplating. It may be,
Yeah, maybe we can think of something to.
it may be in practical as well.
As summary.
Yeah, I mean, all of this information, of course, is on our website. I know the town's website links to our website. I should double check that because we updated the site. Like, it's all sourced in terms of being, you know, public or like a newspaper.
Okay,
We talked about.
no, it's,
Yeah, it's a good thing to think about for sure, young kid too.
I try to stay away from the computer myself.
Why do you do that?
Ah,
Why do you do that?
I did. Break it. There's ways.
I thought today was very good based upon finally somebody, some resident actually provided us, you know, some good questions to answer. And I think that's what we need is more of these questions from the community that, you know, so that can be answered at these meetings. So I thought that was very good.
In terms of the data, you cannot do analysis without having tons of it. At some point, AI can do more of that data, it collects from other cement plants, other sources. So yes, it may appear to be somewhat redundant at the moment, but the more the merrier, I'd say. Another thing on the point of impingement, you're talking about contaminants. When you're talking about contaminants, why would you go to the maximum number instead of the minimum number when you're trying to?
So we are modeling what our emissions maximum are. to see if we're still underneath the point of impingement limit.
Okay.
So we're not looking
From that
at,
standpoint,
our lowest would be not operating. at
you're
zero.
meeting the criteria.
So the maximum will be the more conservative approach.
Yes,
Otherwise,
yes,
it's-
I understand now, yeah.
That, following up, that might be a great question. I mean, there's so many contaminants listed in the regulations that probably 98% of them are probably less than 1% of the standard. But there's probably maybe 4 or 5 you're getting close. I guess probably SO2 or NOx probably right up there at the top of the plan. At 50-60% of standard, probably.
Yeah, the reports on that, I didn't.
Yeah, but I mean, that's probably would be good information, but, here's the 5 contaminants that are over 50% of the current regulation. And those are the ones you should be thinking about.
Yeah. In regards to the description of the smell. It's like when you're doing stick welding, which I know everyone's done in their garage, right? So it's got that same kind of odor, or I would describe it as cannon smoke.
It's like,
Yeah, if you ever been near a,
What's the other word?
pardon,
What's the other word we use there?
cannon smoke,
Cannons.
like
Cannon.
yeah, what's the last time you fired a cannon?
How about a steel mill? You ever been in a steel mill?
Still, I haven't been to the steel
No,
mill.
you should go to a steel mill.
I've done it stick,
You'll find it very similar to a steel mill.
yeah, so it's,
I mean, then I can add the description I give to residents because I tend to talk to them more. I like to say when you're sitting in traffic behind a diesel truck and you're kind of like, oh, he's, like, that's strong. Or sparklers in the summertime.
Well,
Or the last one I'll say is when you turn on your furnace at the end of the summer and all the dust that was in your ducts is starting to heat up.
Right.
But everybody describes it a little different, which is fine.
but there's that burnt metal smell. Yeah, that was, seemed to linger in the air, yeah. Thank you. We're leaving on that tubing now.
Rob, anything?
And lastly, take us in a totally different direction, gonna throw some gratitude out to the cement plant. So Sunday, I'm going to see the Blue Jays a couple times a year, I get to see them. But without the cement plant, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to be the host community of the Baseball Hall of Fame, which we are. And with the run that we're having this year with the Blue Jays, we would probably look forward to a much busier year at the Baseball Hall of Fame next year. So thank you to the cement plant for donating land and always cooperating with everything and encouraging. And 2 years ago, when I asked about renaming the little road around so we could name it after the cement plant, was fully behind me. They, as a matter of fact, they seemed to push me into action even more than I was already into action. So I appreciate the corporate partnership we have here and how it's benefited us in other ways that you don't even, apart from employment, we have the Baseball Hall of Fame. So thank you to Cement Plant for that.
So on the last slide, I just have a couple of closing remarks. First, I guess I'll say for any questions or concerns about cement plant operations, we do encourage to reach out to myself at the cement plant. So my number and email are listed there. I do encourage this and I do encourage people to ask questions and come to tours as well. I do enjoy giving a tour of the operations so people can really see and understand what exactly it is that we do and some of the challenges that come with that. And then finally, I want to highlight, and I do need just a final buy-in. So I do want to do our next meeting in the evening. I did talk to the town about using the operations center and they did mention we can do an evening meeting, but we won't be able to do it here and it will not be live streamed. So it would be at the Pyramid Center. We could do, 6 PM, 6:30 would be okay, but it will not be recorded. So I'm just curious everybody's thoughts on that.
I think offering a night time would be a good thing for the community if they wanna come. I know sometimes people are available during the day, so I think that's a good option for those who may want to participate live.
I think maybe, I know normally is it the first Friday we meet or the second Friday?
Typically the first, it doesn't have to be.
No, it won't be Friday because that's obviously we can't do a Friday evening, but I know that council, we get a little busy in the beginning because we're into budget, we have all our regular meetings. plus we have the additional Christmas events that we attend as well. So, yeah, I don't think either Councilor Craig or myself want to miss an evening like that where the public's gonna be even more involved. So I just, with that in mind, please reach out and see if we can, Jim and I
Yeah.
can find that evening too.
And if I can just chime in a little bit, I think if you have it, I mean, talk to Brent or Jenna, but you know, council chambers can, we get 30 residents or 35,
Absolutely, yeah,
would be all kinds of,
yeah,
you might want to try there. I mean, I think for most meetings I attend at night, whatnot in the community, is invited and whatnot, that'd be more than enough
yeah,
to,
and great visibility with the two large screens on either side of the room.
you know.
Perfect. Thanks for the suggestion. Okay, I will try to solidify the date with yourselves. I know it's pretty soon and stuff maybe isn't filling up yet, but if I can do that, then we'll. Okay. And then finally, our safety for today, we're going to talk about using a ladder safely. So always face the ladder when both ascending and descending. Always maintain 3 points of contact on the ladder. So 2 feet and 1 hand, or 2 hands and 1 foot. The top of the ladder should never be used as a step. Ladder should never be moved, shifted, or extended while occupied, and never carry an object or load that could cause you to lose your balance. Just remember to stay safe.
Just took all the fun out of it.
But we can still walk.
Yeah.
So.
Must be okay.
That used to be a challenge.
All right, well, thanks again, everyone, for joining.